webinar on the address management application. Your presenters for today are George Karoupas, the Director of Technology and Solutions, and myself, Dave Edwards, Project Manager in Technology and Solutions. Just a couple of housekeeping things. We are recording today's sessions, and we will email a link with that recording to you. And at the end of the session, if you could please fill out the exit survey so we know how we did and know if there's any improvements we can make next time. So we are open to questions, which we will get to at the end of the session after the demonstration. If you could please use the Q&A panel and ask all panelists, and then type your question and select send. If you can't see the Q&A panel, if you look down in the lower right, there are 3 dots. If you could click on that, and then you would be able to go to the Q&A panel. So today's agenda. Today we're going to talk about address management and data requirements for next generation 911. We'll explain the application's capabilities and then give you a demonstration of the application's functionality for creating and editing addresses. We have a poll question. We'd like to get some information from you. So if you could open the chat window and respond to the question, and we'll talk about that at the end of the session. You have about 30 minutes when that poll question will be available to be answered. So now on to the address management application itself. So some key points here about NG9-1-1. Or next generation 911 as it's known. It's been under development for a few years, and that's been directed by NENA, which is the National Emergency Number Association in the US. There are also Canadian subcommittees of NENA who are adjusting the specifications and requirements to meet Canadian needs. So some of those key points are that NG9-1-1 will allow 911 agencies to locate somebody calling in for an emergency based on the location of their cell phone or tablet. And that location, of course, is based on the GPS within the device. And so there will be a greater reliance on GIS data in call location applications and 911 dispatch, which all means that the data that they're using for GIS use must be of very high quality to be able to locate that call and respond properly to that address. 911 agencies must conform to standards developed by NENA and the NENA Canadian subgroups, and new GIS data will eventually have to be into 911 systems within 72 hours. So some of the issues that need to be addressed when we're talking about 911 addressing is most common problems that we've seen over the past few years with addressing coming from various agencies, including municipalities, is that we need to resolve the quality. And the types of issues that we're seeing are listed here, or the major types, and it all has to do with attributes and geometry. Geometry has overlaps or is missing. Attributes are missing or incorrect. There's mismatches between different feature types with some of the data that needs to be here. And it's quite a range of what we see from various places. So some places, some of it is pretty high with respect to how much the problem is inherent in their data. Some are rather low, but we need to get that to 0, or at least as close to 0 as we possibly can. So if we look at the data requirements for NG9-1-1, again, it must meet pretty stringent topological data standards, and that's for all layers that's required in the GIS data, not just addressing. Municipalities will also have to supply PSAP and emergency service boundaries if they're available. Road segments must have an address range, and it has to be absolutely correct. There can't be overlaps with other segments. And feature attributes in common must be the same. So for instance, a polygon which has a municipality name must have the same name as a road that is in the municipality. And an address must fall within the address range on the corresponding road segment. So looking at some of the data requirements, and this gets down to the schema level of the database itself, again, developed by NENA. And here you'll see that the address has been broken down into its component parts, and that's each one of those is a field. There is no full address line. It has to be separated out, and that's for use within the computer-aided dispatch system in the 911 centers. There's also some other fields that have been added into the specification for GIS features, and especially the date fields, which are the method that the 911 agency or the aggregator will be able to tell when that GIS feature is to be updated or when it's to expire. So on to the address management app itself and its capabilities. The application has been developed so that you can create and modify and retire addresses, which is really the life cycle of addresses in virtually all municipalities. The application can be configured to your requirements, such as putting in standardized field names. There's many time-saving functionality items within the application so that you don't have to repeat, for instance, putting in the postal code for all addresses. It can be copied over quickly. You can select multiple point placement options. In other words, that's the center of a parcel, center of a building, the access point to the property. And there's built-in data quality control checks, again, to ensure that the data will meet those NG9-1-1 requirements. And in the app itself, we are storing all of the data in the NENA compliant format. So, civic address creation and editing. What you'll learn as we go through the demonstration today is all about the user interface and how that works, what the addressing tools are, because there are several for addressing in certain ways. The attribute panel will be explained and how to configure certain attributes. We'll show how to create new addresses along streets, in parcels, and to be able to add unit numbers to a primary address. And we'll also show you how 3D addressing works, because you will be required to address buildings that have heights such as condos or apartment buildings and actually have those addresses in their 3D position. So now I'm going to turn it over to George, and George is going to give you a demonstration of the application and walk through all the points I just mentioned.
Thank you, Dave. Just give me a few seconds here to set up and share my screen. Let me share my screen here. And there we go. I believe, Dave, you can see the application?
Yes, I can, George. Looks good.
Great. Okay, so we're starting. I just want to walk through the user interface with you a bit before I get into the actual tools. You can see we have the community map of Canada up on the map. Go through the tools here. I think many of you would recognize some of the basic GIS mapping tools. Here we go with the community map of Canada. I have the streets map currently displayed. I can switch that to the topographic map, the streets at night. If you're not familiar with the community map of Canada, the community map of Canada is a map that Esri Canada builds from authoritative sources across Canada. So that's municipalities, provinces, and the federal government. And we release this map about once a week. So it's the most up-to-date map that we have in our base map group. We have the light gray map as well. I'll switch it back to the streets map. We have then bookmarks. So I've just got some predefined bookmarks here that I can easily navigate to. I'll go to fill parcels. This is a web map. So if you're familiar with building web maps, you would build a web map, you would add your contents to the web map, the address points, the street center lines, the building footprints, the parcels. You would then configure the web map, for example, pop-ups, styles, and then take that web map and configure this application against that web map. So if you're familiar with configurable templates or the pre-configured templates that we have in ArcGIS Online, it's very much the same thing. You build a web map, pick a template, you configure the template, and then you publish it. Notice the attributes that we're populating, we're maintaining for addresses. We have the full address. We have each of the component parts that that Dave explained that is required for NextGen 911. And if we scroll down, then we have certain dates that we're tracking, part of that address, when it was created, when it was approved, when it was revised, when the date become active, and also when the date became retired. This value here, the NENA Global Unique ID, is an important ID for NextGen 911. When you're submitting data to the aggregator, the 911 aggregator, they keep track of all GIS features using this unique ID, and this unique ID is prefixed by the feature type, in this case the site address point, so it's prefixed by site, unique a unique number, which is the feature ID in this case, and then the domain value of the municipality who created that address and maintains that address. So this string together makes it unique across Canada. So you got your other basic type of tools here: building footprints, turn off building footprints, site points. We can turn off address points. This application is built with the latest JavaScript 4.x. Layers, so you can see the layer pane. Navigation buttons to zoom. Address locator. This is configurable. So in this case, I've added the site address point as one of the features that I can locate. So if I go in here and type in one Raspberry Lane, let me spell that properly, ASP Berry Lane, gives you the hint. So it's actually now searching through the address feature layer for that address. Pick it, zooms to it, and there we go. It puts a little pop-up. Okay, so now let's go back to my fill parcels, and let's start adding some addresses. Over here on the left-hand side is your address edit pane. So these are the attributes that you're capturing for an address. Some toolbars across the top. You know, add address points, add address points along a road, parallel to a road, fill parcels, and then there's a number of different selection tools for selecting addresses that you want to edit or change. Okay, so let me just go to add as address point. Pick that. Add address point. I get a little hint. Click to add an address point. Let's add one here in this parcel. I'll click it. So notice it automatically places the address point at the centroid of the parcel. So that's really the default on how I've configured this application. It could be the center of a building, or you could place, or the default could be place it anywhere you want. Next, you pick the street. So here we have the master road index, which is a list of all valid road names within your municipality, within your region. And by default, it shows the extent. So all the roads that are within the extent, or I can find all the roads that are buffered by an address, by that address point, or buffered by the parcel, or I can go to the master index and just say, okay, show me all the addresses, all the street names that are within the master index. So let's go back to extent. I'll click the road. That's the road, Hagen Avenue. Click it, populates the attributes. So the road suffix populated that. The municipality, I know by default is Guelph. By default, the province is Ontario. So this little teardrop here tells you that these are default values. That again, that's configurable within the configuration file. I can then add the address number, add 1. Creation dates, approved dates are all automatically set. And then I just click save, and it will save that address. There we go. Let's pop it up. And there we go. There's the full address that's automatically populated and each of the parts of the address. Parcel centroid, like that. So I can add addresses one at a time along these parcels, but you know what? I've got another sort of productivity tool here that says fill parcels. So I click that. I click inside the first parcel. I hold my cursor, my mouse button down. It starts highlighting each of the parcels that I want to add. Automatically place those parcels at the centroid. I can now then fill the address number for each of those parcels. And here's an option that's fill series. So let's say I want to start at number 3, and then the increment is 2. I say apply, and then it automatically labels those address numbers. And again, I pick the street, the road name, same as before. And you notice up here, there's a little scroll bar. So this is kind of like a table with 6 address points, the 6 that I just added. And if I start stepping through the table, I can go to the second one. It says, well, you know, the second one doesn't have a street name yet. You have to fill that in. Well, I could click it, or I could do a copy. And the copy is, I'll go back to the first address in that list, the one of 6. I click this little hamburger here, and I say copy all to all. So what that does, it copied all of the attributes from the first address to all of the other addresses in the list. So now as I step through, and notice the full address down here, it's also down at the bottom here to show you. You can see that it flips through 9, 10, and as it's scrolling through, it highlights the address on the map as well, so that you kind of know where you are. And then I just say save all to save all the address points. And it's going through each address point and saves them to feature service. So this is a ArcGIS Online application, by the way. It can also be on Enterprise if required. And again, I'll just do the pop-up and show you the attributes that are filled. Now, if I want to move that address, let's say, well, you know, for this particular address, I really don't like where it is. I can then I'm going to click my right mouse button, have this little pop-up. So this is just an easy way to get at tools that are available from the toolbar. So let me pick the address pointer parcel. So here, all I had to do is put my cursor in the parcel. It found the address point, populated it in the edit pane, all the attributes. I can go in here and make some modifications, but what I really want to do is a move. So I click the move button right here beside the address point, and let me start moving it. Now, if you notice, it drags the point, but I can't drag that outside of the parcel that it's assigned to. So I can't make a mistake by saying, oh, let's just move it way over here. Well, you can't, because that point is assigned to this particular parcel. And then I can say, well, let's move it over here. I think this is probably a driveway entrance. Click it there. Now, by default, it changed the address type to unknown, but I can change it to the driveway entrance. And then I just say save. So that's a simple move. It enforces the rule that the address point that you're moving has to still be located in the parcel. Now, another tool that we have, to my bookmarks, go along a road. In cases where you don't have any parcels, and maybe this is a new subdivision, and you want to pre-address where you believe there will be parcels in this area, and that's really for emergency services. So NENA 9-1-1 does allow you to submit tentative addresses that are maybe been tentatively approved and are potentially coming from your planning department or for the developer. But for NextGen, you really need to have an address location to route emergency services to it, because as we all know, we can have accidents in construction sites. So this tool here, address along a road, pick that, get a little pull down here with a bunch of attributes. What I'll do is I'll just pick the road. So as you see here, it automatically placed a number of addresses along one side of the road based on the predefined values here. I can say, well, I don't want the addresses on this side. I want to flip it to the other side. So I click that, flips it to the other side. I want to offset those addresses from the road. So I just can kind of click and go incrementally, 35 meters. I also want to click the distance from the start road. So the start is way down here. That's number 1. Actually, I want the first address to appear somewhere up here. So we can just go in here and kind of click that. I'm just holding it down, and that's good enough. And the last address, I also want to move where it's located, and I also can increase that. And I can also say, well, there aren't actually 10 addresses that are going to be there. I can decrement this to maybe 5 addresses. So there are 5 addresses along this road segment. So I just say apply. And now notice that in this case, we have the 5 addresses within the list. I can start going one by one. As I go through each one, it highlights them. If I want, I can actually go in here and say, well, let's label those addresses. So again, I can go one by one, and click through those. Now notice that in this case, all of the attributes for each address was populated from the master road index. So it found this road, Arboretum Road, from the master index. This case, this road actually had a prefix and an article. It had a modifier suffix. It had a directional suffix. So it automatically transferred all those attributes from the master road index into each of the addresses that I created. And then I can just say save all, and it saves all those address points. And let's just take a look at the identify. And there you can start seeing, the full address based on a pre-configured format of an address. Again, you can actually configure how the full address is generated, or the syntax of a full address. And you can see here we go that each individual, the directional suffix, the modifier prefix, the modifier suffix, the name article is all populated for you. Okay, multi-units. Let's go to the add units tool. In here we have a parcel with a primary address. What I want to do now is, okay, these buildings have units, but they're all located, their address is 259 Grange, but there are units within each of those buildings. So let me do my right click, pick the address point or parcel, finds everything, finds that primary address. Now I can go into here, down here into units, and start adding unit numbers associated with that primary address. So we can go do an add. And as I can then click unit numbers along this building, let's click 1, 2, 3 units. And they show up here, 101, 102, 103, shows the type. By default, it's a unit. We can change it to a suite or an apartment, whatever. And as I highlight through here, notice up here the full address changes. So up there is 101.259, 102.259, and 103.259. In this case, I've configured the application to have the unit number, a dash, and then the primary address. You could configure to say 259 Grange Road, Unit 103. So that's a configuration option. The other thing I want to go to is saying, okay, but this is a multi-story building. So I can go into the 3D builder. And here it shows me the address, the units that I've created. And I want to add 2 more floors. I want to say that there's a 101, 201, and a 301. So I simply go in here and I say, what's the height between each floor? In this case, it's 3 meters. I want to say, what do I want to, how many floors I want? So in this case, let me say I can go to 1 to 3. Oops, 1-3, and then say apply. So here we go, it automatically generated the additional floors and it placed them on top of each other. Typically, that's what we've seen, is that for multi-story units, they place each unit number for each floor on top of each other. So as I'm scrolling through, you can see it highlighted. Let me minimize that. And you can also see in here, my main screen, that they show up, and I can just say save. Zoom in a little bit. And if I click, let's say click one of these, you can say there's 1 of 3. So I can click 1 of 3 and it shows you 302, 102, 202 as the address points that are on top of each other. I can go back like this. Now, what we've done also in this case is we've generated them in 3D. So we go to the 3D view, and let me just show you the 3D view here. I don't have 3D buildings for this area, but I do have 3D buildings over in Kingston. And if you have multi-patch buildings, you can build a 3D web scene. This is a 3D web scene. Again, you configure the web scene. You configure the app to consume this web scene, and then it appears within your application. So let me go to where I have the 3D units. So let's go over here and let me just scroll, and you can see those address points appearing on top of each other. There's 110 first, second, third floor, unit 10s, unit 8s, and so forth for this particular building. So if I were to, let me just go back to, so we add units. And hopefully, if I go back to this 3D view, and let's just do a little bit of a refresh here, we should be able to zoom to those units. I've lost my place. That's fine. But to see the other units. Now we do have a workflow. The workflow for moving address points from an approved state. So initially, addresses are entered into the system in an approved state. That could also be tentative. Some people prefer the term tentative. You can configure that. But now that this is in a tentative or approved state and you want to promote that to an active address, we just go through here and we can select those address points. Fills in here into the edit pane. We go to status updates and they all highlight, they all appear in this UI. I'll just click them all. And now we can click the active button to promote those to an active state. And you can see that by default, the address active date is the current time. If we want to make them active into the future, then we can change the date to make it active in the future. And since the NextGen 911 allows you to submit addresses that become active in the future, you can set these into the to become active in the future. Just say save, and then my default for showing active addresses is blue. Okay, so we go back in here. So blue is an active address. So we can click that. Oops, cancel from here. Now we can click it. Those address points, those all become active. All right, so we are working on a bilingual application to support both English and French. We're not complete yet, but we have this button here where you can switch the user interface between French and English, and it's sort of halfway there. You can see some of the text has been converted to French. So that's next in the works. You can see here some of the titles are in French, and I can go back to English. So that's it, Dave. Back to you.
Okay, thanks, George. Great demonstration. Real good look at all the functionality and capabilities of the app, which are plenty. So if we look at, through what George has shown you and what we've talked about previously, the address management app brings a lot of benefits to organizations, and it's not just the NG9-1-1 component. It's everything to do with address management in a municipality, from essentially the birth of an address to when it gets retired. The benefits of the app briefly are that of course the NG9-1-1 ready data model and the workflow will conform to what NG9-1-1 is requiring. It's flexible. As you saw, George could configure a number of different fields to meet the needs of your organization, and make it simpler to add addressing, time-saving feature to the application. We can, of course, create, edit, and retire civic addresses. There's built-in quality assurance. So, for instance, you saw the master street index drop down for selecting the name of the street for an address. That will eliminate any key-in errors that might be made if somebody is manually keying in a street. There's built-in quality assurance all the way through the app so that everything is consistent. And then you'll be able to supply that data out of the application to 911 data aggregators, because it is in the NENA format, which is what they are going to require. So in summary, the webinar, we talked a little bit about NG9-1-1, their data requirements. You've seen the capabilities and functionality of the address management application, and George has gone through all of the ways of creating and editing addresses in the application. So our anticipated release date for this application is Q2 2021. In the meantime, if you would like to talk about it, you can call your account manager and speak to them about it. They've been brought up to date on what we're doing and when things will be made available. Also, we have some resources available. There's a story map, a web page, and we do have a blog going now. And the URLs are at the bottom of each of these diagrams, and you'll get this as part of the slide deck when that is sent out. So now we're at the point where we're going to do some Q&A. Hopefully people have been busy putting questions into that Q&A window, and now I'll turn it over to Christine.
Great, thanks, Dave. We actually have a lot of questions coming through, so thanks everyone for getting those in. But first, we're just going to put up the poll question again, and apologies to everyone. But if you could take a minute to submit your answers again, that would be great. And we'll let you do that while we go through these Q&As. So with that, I'll just remind you that if you would like to submit a question, you can still do so through the Q&A panel on the right side of your window. And if there are any questions that we don't get to during the live webinar, we will follow up with everyone after the fact. So with that, let's start with some questions. The first one, where is the address management app hosted? Is it ArcGIS online based? If yes, would this cause any data residency concerns as the Canadian data would be hosted in a US based cloud?
Yeah, so Christine, I'll answer that question. There's two options. The first is what I showed you. This is an ArcGIS Online application. So the data is stored in ArcGIS Online. However, for those organizations that are concerned about data residency and privacy or have policies, this can also be implemented on ArcGIS Enterprise. So we do support both environments.
Okay, perfect. Okay, the next question. Can rules in the underlying geodatabase be implemented to facilitate unique data integrity rules that may be unique to our city or organization?
There are a number of pre-built rules, address rules that are really driven by the NENA standard. If there are unique rules that the city or org have, then I'd really be interested in hearing what those are, because you know, we're really open to enhancing the product, the solution, and adding more business rules as required.
Perfect. Next question. Can the user select the side of the road for calculating left and right address ranges on the road segments?
Can the user say that again?
Right. Can the user select the side of the road for calculating left and right address ranges on the road segments?
Oh, updating address ranges on the road segment. Not right now. We don't have the capability in the tool to update the address ranges on the road center line, if that's what you're asking. That is something that is in our product plan to provide that kind of tool.
Great. And the next question, are both English and French road name suffixes supported for a road name record?
Yes, they are.
Okay, the next question. A lot of times we add addressing before parcels are available. Can you use a different layer from a draft plan, for example, instead of parcels?
Sure. Right now, the application assumes that it is using the parcel layer, but if you have some kind of draft plan that you want to put in instead, then we could use that layer instead of the parcel layer.
Okay, great. Next question. For the fill parcels function, is it possible to use an interval based on distance? For example, increments by 2 for every 3 meters.
No, that's a great question. That's a great capability. No, we don't have that capability, but that's something that we could consider for sure. That's something we'd be interested in putting into the application.
Okay, great. Next question. Is the address layer a hosted feature on ArcGIS Online?
Yeah, so we support both types of deployments, ArcGIS Online or within ArcGIS Enterprise. So on premises or online, both deployments are supported depending on what your organization needs are.
Okay, great. Can you have more than one address per parcel? I'm in a rural area and this happens fairly often.
Yes, you can have multiple addresses per parcel, assuming that those addresses are unique to some level, right? So you could have, I don't know, a address number that's 100 Main Street, basement 100 Main Street, main floor 100 Main Street, rear, something like that. As long as those addresses are uniquely identified, you can have multiple address points in a parcel.
Okay, great. Next question. Is there ability to upload a geo-referenced image that would show a plan for subdivision for the person creating the address points to reference, as the parcel lines won't be available to reference for all municipalities in our workflows, and we make address points before we get the parcel fabric?
Yeah, so you could create a web map, right? So since everything is tied to the web map, the application is tied to web map, you could reference that image in your web map and use it as a backdrop for placing address points.
Okay, perfect. Next question. Is the master street table, if the master street table gets updated, will those be automatically reflected in the addresses?
Yeah, so that's also a feature that we're looking at, a capability that we're looking at in the future as well. So yes, when a street name changes, you want the system to somehow change all the addresses for that street. So you might like change the name of a street from something to something else. Then there should be a tool to automatically update all those address points. So yes, that's a future capability that we've considered.
Okay, great. Next question. Do multi-units have to be numerical?
No, they don't have to be numerical, but we need some way of identifying floors, each floor that those units, if it's a multi-story unit. I mean, if it's just like a row of townhouses, certainly they don't have to be numerical. It can be actually it can be alphanumeric, it can be a combination of numbers and letters.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Next question. Can the application be used in a multi-user context? Our municipal address office has 4 staff that maintain the addressing, and the process, the subdivision plays, and in other development that requires addressing.
So in a multi-user context, there's no versioning. It's ArcGIS Online, so and Enterprise, so there isn't any using feature services, so there's no versioning in place. So as long as those individuals are working on different areas of the map, maybe they're maintaining different subdivisions of the map, then sure, you can have multiple users updating the addresses.
Okay, great. Got a few more questions here. Well, time for a few more. Do the addresses need to be set up multi-points for the 3D aspects?
Do the addresses need to be set up multi-points? No, it's their individual point features, not multi-point features. So those are individual addresses. So the NENA specification requires that you send individual address points to the aggregator. So that's how multi-story buildings are addressed, as individual points on the map.
Okay, great.
One more? Any more?
Yeah, one more,
Yeah.
and anything that we haven't answered live, we'll get back to everyone. This last question. So when managing our own address point data sets, do we still have to share these points on open data? Or will something like the community maps, if you're a community map participant, will this information be pulled from the open data source?
So what you could do is you could publish this feature service to your open data site and share it with the community map program. That's probably the most efficient way for the community map program to access features is through your open data site. So you'd probably want to update your open data feature service with the addresses that you maintain in the application on a regular basis. So they get updated and then they're available to the Community Maps program, because the Community Maps program has a tool that goes out and harvests open data sites on a nightly basis, on a daily basis. So if you keep that feature service up to date, then we will grab those addresses and those changes from the open data feature service.
Okay, great. Thank you, George. And thanks to everyone for submitting your questions. Dave, I'll pass it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Christine. So I'd just like to point out the poll question we asked. We got about 100 responses. And of that, probably over 80% are currently using a GIS tool for their address management. And it's really kind of split on what tools they're using, although ArcMap does take quite a chunk of that, but Pro coming in right behind it, and Pro, of course, will continue to become the GIS tool of preference as we move forward. So we'd like to thank you for attending today. We really appreciate all of you coming in and spending some time with us to learn about the address management app. And if you do have any, say, technical or implementation questions or any suggestions, we encourage you to contact us, either George at the address there or myself, and we'll get back to you if it's a question, and we'll acknowledge anything that you send in as well. So again, thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.